Amen. This past March, I visited my grand twins, and they were all excited to take me to the Fernbank Museum of Natural History in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, I was expecting that we were going to go to the petting zoo, but no, they have developed a fascination with dinosaurs. So we went through room after room, and there's the Stegosaurus and the Brontosaurus, and they knew names that I didn't even know, and of course the T-Rex, they're all excited about the T-Rex. And the last room in the exhibit was about what happened to the age of the dinosaurs. Now, we were in that room, and with us there were another set of grandparents with presumably their grandson, and I heard the grandson ask out loud, "Gammy, where is Noah and the flood in this exhibit?" And Gammy paused for a moment and said, "Well, honey, Noah passed a long time ago." And then they went to the last panel that described the end of the dinosaur age, beginning with a huge meteor that hits the planet, causing catastrophic climate change, thus ending the age of the dinosaurs. And the little boy said, "Can that happen again?" Well, Gammy and her husband, if they answered, I didn't hear them. They moved quickly out of the exhibit, and they headed towards the playground where presumably a less fraught conversation could ensue. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the biblical story of the flood, the prophecies of Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Joel and Zechariah, the book of Daniel, the book of Revelation. These are just a few of the ancient references to some kind of apocalypse, some kind of end times, the end of the world. And while we know that these times that we're in are in some ways no different than earlier times, it absolutely feels different. This age of anxiety, which is actually the name of a poem written by W.H. Auden in 1947, is upon many of us, which is exacerbated by the fluctuating stock market, by the seemingly chaotic rulings of the current administration, by uncertainty about climate change, the benefits and fears about artificial intelligence, wars, rumors of wars. All this and more conspire towards a question that's in perhaps the backs of our minds, maybe in the foregrounds of our minds. Is this the beginning of the end? In 2020, 1 in 3 Americans expected an apocalyptic event in their lifetime. In 2021, a survey of people between the ages of 16 and 25, 56% of them agreed with the statement, "Humanity is doomed." And while I was talking with Carlos, our worship associate, about this service, I said, "You know, when you talk to your friends, do you ever discuss the end of the world?" Just a little light topic. And he said, "Yeah, my friend and I, we joke about being in a civil war, like the film that came out in 2024 of that same name called Civil War." And the film that Carlos was referring to was one that I saw as well. It's a dystopian action thriller film that follows a team of war journalists traveling from New York City to Washington, D.C. during a civil war between a despotic federal government led by a third-term president and a successionist movement. And their task was to interview the president before rebels took over the Capitol. It's a film worth watching, but I warn you, it is profoundly disturbing as it documents the demise of democracy, the rise of anarchy, ruled not by law, but xenophobia, racism, and zealotry. So, like all dystopian films and novels, there is just enough truth in them to make me, perhaps us, feel uncomfortably close to coming true. And I'm not a voracious consumer of dystopian dramas or a fan of the book of Revelation. It is undeniable that a fascination with the eschaton, the end of things, is built into our DNA. Perhaps it is deeply interconnected with our fear of death, of a final ending that we cannot truly imagine. The biblical author Ecclesiastes once opined, "Better is the end of a thing than its beginning." And one interpretation of that line is that when we reach the end of our lives, or the end of something in our lives, we have knowledge of all the experience that went before. And in the fullness of that time, we come to know ourselves more intimately and perhaps differently because of that ending. There's a book that just came out last year by Dorian Lynskey called Everything Must Go. And I must admit, I first thought it was like a book about purging and tidying up. So I'm flipping through it and say, oh no, this is the second part of the title is The Stories We Tell About the End of the World. And there's a reveal about this anxiety, about the ending. In the introduction, which is entitled Apocalypse All the Time, it outlines this human fascination with the end times. Will it happen? How will it happen? When will it happen? Will it happen like it was foretold in the 80s, that Left Behind series, when people were getting raptured up and taken up into heaven? Would I get to do that and my annoying neighbor has to face the apocalypse? Well, the apocalypse didn't happen then either. But Christian beliefs in the rapture, they tend to spike at the worst of times, and they arise from circumstances both political and personal. And each can have an impact on the policies we make, the people we wish to protect or harm, and the ways in which we personally face crises in our own time. So let's take a look at the political first by going back to the book of Revelation. Who's actually read the book of Revelation? I'm just curious. It is a hard book. I tried once leading a Bible study on it and with a bunch of UUs, and they're like, no, we're not going to do this. But let me give you a quick tutorial about it. It's not a book, actually. It's a series of letters written around the year 96 CE by a Christian named John, not the John of the Gospels, but John of Patmos, known by that name because he was imprisoned in the Isle of Patmos. And John's audience was to 7 emerging Christian communities, and he was writing in coded language against the corrupt practices of Emperor Domitian. And for John, the only force powerful enough that he could imagine, the only force that was powerful enough to save the world was the return of Christ. And Christ would set everything all right again. And, it is a fascinating book, but if you do want to look at it yourself, trigger warning, it's very misogynistic, and there are at least 2 passages which are deeply anti-Semitic, and it makes it a very hard book to read. But it has been used politically for all sorts of ill gains. I read that Christopher Columbus, for example, used the book of Revelation as his marching orders to go out and have dominion over a new heaven and creating a new earth. Historian Richard Hofstadter, in an essay called The Paranoid Style in American Politics, tells us that the book of Revelation is the lifeblood of American conspiracy theories. In fact, he continues, one could read Revelation as the original conspiracy theory in which secret knowledge is revealed to the righteous few who are wise enough to decipher it, and the forces of good finally defeat the villainous cartel that is responsible for all the evil in the world, end quote. And then later on, in this very provocative passage, he continues with an observation that I think has chilling resonances with the current political situation in many regimes around the world. He writes, Totalitarianism demands apocalyptic myths of a golden past, on a cured present and a glorious future. Whenever the violence of the elect is purported to purify the world and give birth to a new society, the mythic logic of Revelation is at play, and the alleged incarnations of evil must be annihilated, end quote. It's no wonder we're worried about the apocalypse, the end of times, because it's personal, especially if you are part of or connected to a family that has a green card or a visa holder or have brown skin or are trans, or as a person who engages in political protest to counter to current US foreign policies. And as I was reading this, I was remembering that oft-quoted Robert Frost poem, who wrote, "Some say the world will end in fire, and some say in ice." And he's saying that both desires, inflamed desires, and cold and cruel indifference and hatred can bring about the end of the world as we know it. But you remember the rest of the poem goes on with a slightly sarcastic wink. "From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire, but if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to know that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice." So what we often forget as we stand anxiously between fire and ice, awaiting the end of the world, is that the word apocalypse has another meaning. Apocalypsis is the Greek word for revelation, which means literally removal of the veil, to reveal what is hidden, not to close, but to disclose, to reveal what is real, and even what is possible. So in her book, Facing Apocalypse, Climate, Democracy, and Other Last Chances, Catherine Keller identifies not what is being revealed in books like Daniel or Revelation from so long ago, but what is being revealed about our politics and our planet right now. Keller says John is not predicting future facts, but revealing fatal patterns. Might facing the apocalypse in its ancient intensity help us face apocalypse in our own time? This would mean confronting the forces of destruction, to crack open, to disclose a space where last chances remain nonetheless real chances. Nonetheless, real chances. In our faith tradition, we don't believe in abandoning the work of the world in favor of some paradise in the next. We don't deny the realities around us when we see them because of political pressure or a theological belief that this world should be destroyed in order to make way for a new utopia. Nor do we allow ourselves to wallow in the luxury of despair. I've been sobered by the insights of Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker, who wrote an essay some time ago now called After the Apocalypse. And she critiques this popular religious notion of the coming apocalypse. She asks, haven't we had enough apocalypses already? We are living in a post-slavery, post-Trail of Tears, post-internment camps, post-Holocaust, post-Hiroshima, post-Vietnam, post-9/11. I could go on and on and on. She writes, we are living in the aftermath of collective violence that has been severe, massive, and traumatic. And the scars of slavery, genocide, and war mark our bodies. For so many communities on this planet, hasn't the apocalypse already come? And she asked us not to look forward to an apocalyptic future, but to repair the apocalypses that have already done so much damage to our humanity and to our planet. So here's the hope and the challenge for us. And it's posed by novelist Patricia Lockwood. She wrote this. She says, despite everything, the world is not ended yet. What was the reflex that made it catch itself? What was the balance it regained? Now, I'm not a big fan of the book of Revelation, but I do love the line that you heard from this morning's anthem, right from the book of Revelation. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall be there any more pain, for the former things have passed away. It's a vision of what the world could be like. And it's not unlike what we envision when we talk about creating beloved community and what that looks like, what that feels like. Why then is it so hard to imagine not the end of the world, but instead a world that our hearts know is possible? Why is it, for example, that Hieronymus Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delight seems less interesting than his depiction of a dystopian hell? Is it because we fear creating paradise on earth is too boring, impossible, beyond our abilities? Is it impossible to imagine a world where Israelis and Palestinians families can break bread together? Where the people of Ukraine and Haiti, Senegal and Sudan, Myanmar and Mali, Syria and Somalia can live and thrive without violence? Is it impossible to imagine a world where Emmett Till went back home to Chicago and George Floyd walked away from that convenience store in Minneapolis? Is it impossible to imagine a world without the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, or the Amazon rainforest being decimated, or the Colorado River drying up as a desert bed? Is it impossible to imagine the return of extinct species like the Pinta giant tortoise or the Yangtze River dolphin or the Formosan clouded leopard? It's not impossible. For if the apocalypse teaches us anything, it can also reveal what's possible. But it's going to take some practice and some training. And that's where this morning's sermon title comes in. I'm sure you were all wondering, what is that? Shadowboxing the apocalypse? Well, truth in advertising, it's a line I borrowed from a song lyric by John Barlow, one of the lyricists for the band The Grateful Dead. I know, it kind of works nicely, doesn't it? But it also ties into a personal experience that I had while trying out the training that boxers undergo. Several years ago, I joined this fitness club called Round 9. And we taped up our hands, just like real boxers, and we put on these enormous boxing gloves. But before I was allowed to hit anything, I had to do shadow boxing, moving my feet and throwing punches as if I were hitting the bag. Bam. My trainer explained, this prepares your muscles before you engage in the real thing. And that describes so well what spiritual practice does for you. It prepares your spiritual muscles before you engage in the real thing of everyday life. So shadowboxing the apocalypse is a demanding spiritual practice of beating back the temptation to believe that the world is doomed and not worth saving, or to believe that there is nothing we can do. It's about creating a muscle memory of hope. Because as the poet Lynn Unger reminds us, we are lined up on the track, person after person in an endless chain, and there is no hero to ride in on a white horse. We are the heroes of our own destiny. And then she gets really physical with that metaphor. We're the ones that have to gnaw at the ropes of the person ahead of us. And I can do that because I believe people are worth saving. I'm a universalist that way. But even more than that, I think about the person on the chain behind me, gnawing with all their might on my ropes to set me free. And that inspires me, along with the poet Adam Zagajewski in his poem when he writes, to praise the mutilated world. And I want to go back. I want to go beyond, actually, where the poet Joy Harjo ends. Perhaps the world doesn't end at the kitchen table, where we are laughing and crying, but instead, we tuck our children into bed, and we pat the hands of our beloved elders, and we watch the sunset together as night falls, and the peace that passes our understanding envelops us. I want to go back to Patricia Lockwood's question when she writes, "Despite everything, the world has not ended yet." What was the reflex that made it catch itself? What was the balance it regained? I've got an answer for that. The answer is you. May it be so.